Okay. Uh, okay. So, has anyone here heard of Alexander technique or done any Alexander technique? Yes. Okay. A little bit, but not much. Okay, cool. So Alexander technique is a really cool modality that's used by singers and other musicians to help release tension in ways that aren't overtly like telling you like relax here or whatever, but they're finding roundabout ways to help you release tension because releasing tension is super important for everybody uh, for everybody, period, but also especially for us as we're making music. Um, and so actually, I want to invite everybody. Hello, more people are joining. I want everybody to grab a notebook if you want, a notepad and pen, just if you want to take any notes, because I'm going to start telling you some things that might be interesting to write down. Up to you. So Alexander technique is something that I've had experience with over the years, off and on. I've never done any like intensive, like, and I'm not certified or anything like that. But I went to a course I went to a 1 day experience with Alexander Technique back in the fall as part of my National Association of Teachers of Singing. And I learned some things there that I think are really helpful for us in a learning environment, in a learning space. And so Alexander Technique is, well, let me say this. All you really have to offer other people is your state of being, right? So whether you've baked them cookies or whatever it is that you may offer them, really the only thing you have to offer other people is your state of being. And that could be if you're on a stage singing, and it could also be if you're just interacting with people in general, like interacting with people. So Alexander Technique offers us an opportunity to change our state. Should we desire to, should we choose to? And so, having said that, I want you guys to, assume a position that would be conducive to meditation if you can. So, sitting, feet flat on the floor, and then knees at kind of a 90-degree angle. So your ankles are under your knees. And then finding your palms just resting on your thighs. And then you can allow your eyes to close. And feeling tall through the crown of the head, imagine yourself as a brontosaurus. Belinda, the brontosaurus, just for a moment here, with a long floating neck, a broad back, and a large, heavy tail. And you should feel your spine in a state of alignment and float as you are in this position. Bring your awareness to your breath and just notice what it's doing. Please don't judge it and don't feel compelled to change it. Just notice it, observe it, and appreciate it. It works all day long while you are ignoring it and doing other things. So the breath is an amazing tool, especially for us as singers, but even just as human beings. The breath is the main way that we bring energy into the body to change our state. And so with that being said, in this comfortable position with eyes closed, we're going to do a little bit of box breathing. So box breathing is inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and I would encourage you to hold it without closing your glottis, without closing off the air, but just allowing everything to be open and just staying in a state of suspension, of inhalation that's just not continuing because there's no more space for breath, but you're not closing off and holding anything. So the inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4, again, without closing the glottis. So without closing the body off to breath, but just staying in a space of emptiness and calm. So if at any point you feel uncomfortable doing box breathing, you can take a break from it and rejoin us if you'd like or not. So it's all up to you. All right, beginning now Exhaling all the air to start. Inhale for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4, floating there, suspending, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhaling, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And in the empty for 2, 3, 4. Inhale, hold, exhale, and calmly in the empty for a moment. Inhale, suspend, exhale, and hold. Inhale, suspend, exhale, hold. One more round. Inhale, suspend, exhale, and hold. Allow the eyes to flutter open on the next inhalation. And rejoin. Okay, comments? Anybody? You can either talk out loud or you can put something in the chat. Either way, comments about how the box breathing affected you, whether it be physically, physiologically. I feel some heat, for instance. You can steal my response. They can be repeated. Makes you want to yawn. Exhale wanted to be much slower. Good. Heat in the face, me too. Yep. A little floaty. Mm-hmm. Yep. Very relaxed. Excellent. Yes, people say there's actually a specific sequence of number counts for inhalation, holding, and exhaling that are specifically for helping you fall asleep. And I don't remember. Yeah, yeah, not closing off. That's great. So the breath has so much power to change our state. It's really amazing. And the breath has everything to do with what we do as singers in our support and also with our acting. So it's all tied together. The breath is sort of a common thread that's there that's super important to harness for us to be able to understand and harness to become empowering to us because the breath can also sometimes run away and make us crazy. All right. I should say this too. I will share, I have a Facebook group, and I will share in the Facebook group a link to a breathwork exercise, which you're invited to try. I think it's about 17 minutes long, where she does a combination of abdominal and thoracic breath, where it's very I don't know how to explain it, very intensive. And in fact, she'll say at the beginning, you may feel like you can't continue this, but just stick with it, stick with the rhythm of the breath. And then by the time the 17 minutes are over, um, I felt when I finished doing it, like my cells were vibrating like on fire almost, like not in a bad way, but just like ooh, super energized. And that's kind of the effect of oxygen on the body, which is super cool, which is why exercise is so recommended and so important because it invites that oxygen into our bodies and helps our mitochondria, all of our functions to have what they need in order to do what they need to do. Okay, so that was Alexander, and the final part of that, well, the box breathing wasn't necessarily Alexander, but this idea of changing our state. The final part of it is going to help us release some mental tension. So we have both physical tension that can get in our way as singers. We also have mental tension that can get in our way, again, as singers, but also as people. So the first one we're going to make two agreements as part of our time together today. The first agreement is I have time. I have time. Even if you may feel like that's not true a lot of the time, I feel like that sometimes. I try to remind myself, but that is a part of a piece of mental tension that will then turn into physical tension in the body if we feel like we don't have time. This happens a lot with young people too, who really want to be somewhere that they're not, or even people who are young in an activity. Like I'm new to singing and I want to be better right now. I don't have time for this process to occur. I need it now, right? So that feeling of impatience or that feeling of busyness, that feeling of so many things to do, no time, all of that is creating tension. So if we say, I have time, even if it's just for this time we have together, then that will release some of that tension for us. And the other one that's really fun is, I don't have to be right. I think that's especially helpful for people who do feel like they have to be right. And I think that's the majority of us who like to be right and try really hard to be in the right. Sometimes when we're approaching a learning situation, yeah, Emily.
I just have a comment because I also teach, and what I tell my students is, you don't have to be perfect. You're doing something you've never done before, and chances of you doing it perfectly the very first time is not likely. So you don't have to be right. You don't have to be perfect in this process. That's not what it's about. It's not why you're here.
Right? Yeah. In fact, making mistakes is important to growth. And that makes me think about, I last weekend had the opportunity to perform with a choir that was made up of BYU Singers alumni. So my undergrad choir, that was an amazing choir. And it was full of amazing musicians. And it's a reminder of working with this mentor of mine, Ronald Staley. And what he would say to us. Sorry, I try really hard not to get emotional, but it still happens sometimes. So just give me a second. So this is what he would always say to us, because he wanted a choir of soloists. He wasn't interested in a bunch of people who were just going to sing because they knew, in a way that they knew it would be partially covered up by other people. He wanted everybody to be courageous. And he said to us before our concert, he said, take risks. And if you make mistakes, no harm done. That was his stance. So it wasn't like he was afraid, like, oh, it's going to make a scene. That's going to be embarrassing, if someone messes up in the concert. No, he was like, take risks. So, and that's absolutely important for learning. So I don't have to be right. Also, Emily, I want to respond to your thing about being perfect too, because I don't know if any of you saw my social media post from, I don't know when it was, a few days ago, maybe, where it started out, I just want to be perfect. Holly saw it. Okay. Yeah. So, and it was like the answer that came to me in that moment of innocence, I really feel like I said it innocently, was, oh, and you think you know what that is? Because we can have ideas about what it would be to be perfect. And those ideas come from, again, what I'm going to talk about in a moment, with the way that I grew up and how it affected my approach to singing for decades before I kind of became conscious of it. And that is, we want to protect ourselves from criticism and from needing to be corrected, or just anything that makes us less acceptable to other people. And so I think, well, if I could be perfect, then it would save me. It would save me from having to suffer that rejection or that feeling of not being good enough, right? But the truth is that when we are perfect, we are whole. And when we are connected to ourselves and to each other, we are whole. And that's the closest that we'll ever get to perfect. even though we may imagine that it means something else. And so our best avenue to arriving at perfection is going to be finding wholeness, beginning within ourselves, and then sort of allowing that to disperse. So that's the journey that I'm on and that I invite you to also be on. Okay, so I don't have to be right. And Chelsea, I see that you asked here, if we don't have to be right, what would we be?
It was kind of almost rhetorical because I'm thinking when I do like an affirmation, I think, what would I want to put in place of that? And so as I listened to you, I heard courageous, whole, risk taking. So it was kind of like trying to think, okay, what would I affirm instead of not having to be right? So you came up with a few that I could think of, okay, I can say that instead of
Yes. And I
like
would, above all, sorry, go ahead.
just what I would be seeking instead of focused on right, what would I focus on instead? So that was helpful.
Yes. And I would say open is a good one too. When we're right, we're closed in a certain way because it's like, well, I know that. So end of story. But if we're open to learning more, ego. Yeah. Well, and the ego keeps us safe too, right? The inner critic, these are all functions to keep us safe. Um, But one of my favorite Rilke quotes is, let no place within me hold itself closed, for where I am closed, I am false. So is everybody ready to be open today? I hope we can get through the material I had planned. If not, then we'll continue tomorrow because I have more fun stuff planned all week. And yeah, and we're recording. So if anybody can't make it, I love having you here in person, but if you can't make it, you can watch it later. Okay, so this is the theme of this masterclass. Oh, hold on. I saw another comment over here. Willing to explore doing things differently in effort to move towards our goals. Beautiful. Thank you, Emily. Uh, so the theme of this masterclass is fall in love with your voice. And I chose these specific, well, I channeled these specific words because I think that for so many of us, there's a feeling of discontent with the voice on some level or another, right? And the inner critic comes right in to say, yes, that is wrong. Something is wrong there, right? And so we stay in this state of kind of ill at ease with our voice. So falling in love with our voice. Has anyone had an experience with falling in love before with like a person? Like, yeah, okay, I like it. If anyone wants to put in the chat or raise a hand about like what that feels like, what the sensation in the body, what the thoughts, or maybe there aren't thoughts, maybe it's mostly just like, like a feeling of yes. I'd welcome any of your focus on the good things about them for sure. Yes, and that's that oxytocin and those chemicals that are free. Yeah, sense of safety with that person. Yeah. Oh, I love that one. Oh, I love that because that's exactly what we want with our voice too. Yes, freedom, safety. Like you can do anything you put your mind to. Yeah. Light, open, anything possible. You're excited about the future. You feel free, limitless opportunities. Yes. So it seems like a high bar, right? Fall in love with your voice, all of that. But I'm telling you, this is what you can have. And this is what I want for every one of you. Okay, so I want to tell you one of my favorite stories about Leontyne Price, who I'm sure Olivia knows who she is. Do people know who Leontyne Price is? Yeah, Emily knows. Okay, so Leontyne Price is a legendary soprano from like when did she start singing? Maybe even in the late 50s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Sang forever, a Black woman with gorgeous high notes that were just insane to listen to. They were just these crystalline, soul-stirring moments. And she did a solo recital at Carnegie Hall. And after she was done with her entire program, she sang because of standing ovations, right? Which I didn't know this. When did I learn this? I don't know. But standing ovations, especially like in Italy, can last for 15 minutes. or 20 minutes, people clapping for that long. I was like, what? So because of her audience response, she offered them 9 encores. So she did a full recital and then she offered them 9 encores. Right? And the encores were opera arias. They weren't like fluffy things, you know, but and afterward, the press interviewed her and they said, how do you do it? Like, how do you sing an entire recital and then sing 9 encores? And she said, I just love the sound of my voice. She was in love with her voice, you guys. And that was the impetus. That was the way that she was able to keep going and keep going, right? When I first heard that story, I was like, ooh, what? Like I had to process it for a minute. I was like, that's just, yeah. How is that possible? How is all of this possible? Well, it's a journey. It's a journey. It takes some time because it takes mental wrapping mind around. It also takes physical and spiritual sort of wrapping self around and opening up to at the same time. Okay, so I want to tell you guys about love versus the law. So I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine who's kind of deep. She lives here in Mount Pleasant, where I live, and I'm so glad she's here. She's like a very thoughtful soul, and she was telling me about the law and the love and how they were separated in the Garden of Eden. It was like kind of deep. We're not going to go into all of that because I actually don't understand it completely. But what I do understand is how the law and the love work together in singing. So the law, which is like justice, right? Which is like the rules, is important and it plays a role, right? And then we have the love on the other side, which is like mercy, compassion, kindness, patience. All those things are wrapped up over here. So we spend a lot of time worrying about the details of our singing and worrying about what we sound like and worrying about different parts of our range and how it's doesn't seem to be fitting together, or really just our inner critic piping up at various intervals, trying to protect us, trying to keep us safe, trying to prevent us from getting hurt, but really hurting us in the process, right? Holding us back. And so we have to, in order to fall in love with our voice, we have to recognize there has to be a balance between these two. And I would say that most people spend their time in a very law-heavy place in their mind about their voice. And so we could talk about these also as like left brain, right brain. Left brain being the more analytical, the more thinking side of things, and then the right brain being that big picture feeling sort of component, right? And we have both, and they're literally separate hemispheres, and they also need to be in balance, right? Okay, so this is what I started to tell you about. We'll revisit this whole law and love thing. This is going to be a major theme. But what I started to tell you earlier was how I noticed from the time I was young that people liked my voice, and I used it as a way of sort of, oh, here, hold on, there's more. Conscious versus subconscious. Ooh, yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. So I grew up in a family where I was one of the younger siblings. And so it was like my oldest siblings were always way ahead of me. And they let me know that. Like they weren't that magnanimous or supportive about my small accomplishments because they were dwarfed by their larger accomplishments, because they were 10 years, 9 years older than me. And so I was always sort of hoping that something I did would be worthy of their praise. And honestly, I can't say that it ever was. And that might make people feel sorry for me. I feel a little sorry for myself, but that's something that I've had to move through as an older person and recognize, okay, I don't need validation from the outside. But it was something that I felt like I needed for literally decades of my career. And so I was looking to please other people. I was looking to try to sound the way that they wanted me to sound, or to sound like other people who had received that validation in order to also be validated. Also, trying to be the best, because if I'm the best, then people have to approve of me because I'm the best, right? And so all of these sort of attempts to secure that sense of approval for myself led eventually to burnout for me, absolute burnout, because what I was seeking was hollow and there wasn't anything there for me really. It's lonely to be on top, right? Not that I was ever like on the top, but you know, that's what I was looking to be. I wasn't necessarily, yeah. Yeah. And what do you think your reasons are for wanting to be the best, Emily, if you don't mind sharing? I love your passion.
So my dynamic was different growing up. But wanting, it didn't matter if it was in singing or other areas. It was a general overall just wanting to be the best at everything I tried or in whatever dynamic I was in or whatever program or community or whatever. But it wasn't about being better than everyone. It was about feeling like I was worthy enough to be with everyone else. And that I had to be the best or with the best in order to justify my own existence or participation. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
it's a little
absolutely.
different, but I can relate to it.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because I've been working on this stuff for a long time, but I just was doing a tapping session. If you guys know what EFT is, emotional freedom technique, but it's like you tap different parts. I was doing a tapping session with this lady in Spain, who's a British lady, was not in Spanish. And this stuff bubbled up that I was like, what is this? But it's so deep within a lot of us, if not most of us, if not all of us, to feel like we're not good enough. And so when that's reinforced by the people around us, it's even harder. And so that fear can keep us from actually chasing after our potential and from proceeding like we're talking about with all of this, what you feel like when you're in love, right? Sense of safety, freedom, light, open, anything possible. Like you can do anything you put your mind to, excited about the future, right? Limitless opportunities. Those that fear and those yeah, it is a fear of not being good enough that's inside of us, limits our thinking, limits our beliefs, and therefore limits what we're willing to do, limits our courage, our level of courage, right? And so that's why we're here together today, is because I want to talk with you um, about how we can increase our safety in order to, yeah, sounds good, Saren. Thanks for joining. We're gonna wrap up soon here. Um, oh, we should chat about the brain tap. Yeah, let's chat about the brain tap. Emily, tell me about brain tap.
You may not want to know about now. That's why I sent you a direct message, not to the
Oh,
group, but
oh,
it's something we can save and then if you
okay.
want to refer to it later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Is it like tapping? Is it like the other tapping that you're?
It's different. It's different, but
Okay.
it's
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, there's so many modalities that go into singing that are helpful for singing. In fact, I've been interested for several years in the vagus nerve and stimulating the vagus nerve to create vagal tone in the body, which is healthy for every aspect of ourselves, every single one, which is crazy. But let me just talk for a second about singing from, excuse me, singing from the outside in. So what I've been describing about my feelings of seeking validation externally, and that was sort of what ruled my thoughts, the law, um, through a lot of my career and through growing up, um, always looking to other people to know if you're doing it right, right? Like, where do you receive validation from if not externally, right? I didn't know when I was young at all. And so it wasn't until I actually went to hypnotherapy when I was so fortunate when I first moved to New York. I knew a baritone who was a colleague of mine. He was at NOLA Studios waiting for an audition, and I met him, and he told me he asked me if I wanted to try some hypnotherapy because he was also a hypnotherapist in addition to being a baritone who sang at the Met. Like he wasn't like some small potatoes baritone. And I was like, yeah, because that's kind of who I am. I'm kind of open to a lot of things. And I consider that a strength. And I went and did hypnotherapy with him. And in the first session, it was like my eyes were open to this thing that was probably the elephant in the room that I had just never seen, which was, oh yeah, I'm living my life for other people. I'm actually all my choices are related to what I think my parents would want me to do, or the church, whatever it is, et cetera, et cetera. It was like, oh, I've never actually consulted anything except for that external validation, like not just in my singing, but in general, right? I was just like, oh wow, but where else would I look for that, right? I mean, directly with God. That's a really good answer. And I had tried to do that, but sort of within the framework of, as long as it complies with what everyone else wants for me, it's like I'll do that thing if it's within this framework of what's been set forward. And anyway, so once I had that initial hypnotherapy visit, and I learned about the art of letting go, which we're going to talk about not today, but probably tomorrow and at some point this week. And then understanding what's left there when you let go of everything. My life was changed forever. My singing was changed forever. And I've been on this path since that time of trying to deepen what I call singing from the inside out, which is tapping into the divinity within yourself for internal validation. Because the truth of the matter is, every single one of us is different. And every single one of us has unique strengths that only we can bring to the table. And so, what happens if we're looking for other people to tell us what to do and how to live our lives and how to sing? Well, our unique sound, our unique voice will not come forth. It can't, unless we are the ones to find it and to have the courage to let it out. So, singing from the inside out is taking the time to find that stillness, to find that connection every day, so that it's reinforced and you feel that validation within yourself that then is the guide for how you sing, right? So, and this is the love aspect of it. I would say there still is the law, but the law needs to be so much diminished compared to what it currently is, in my opinion. And we need to have a lot more love that comes in. And so it comes from within us through the art of letting go, which we'll talk about tomorrow, because I need to wrap things up. I don't want to keep you guys too long. I want to keep these short and sweet. But let me just make sure I don't have anything else. Any comments from anybody on this, what I'm talking about, singing from the inside out? Does it make sense? Not caring what other people think, for sure. And I was going to say, one easy way to do this is kind of like a quick fix. If you don't have time to talk with people about spirituality and inner healing modalities and things like that as a voice teacher, is you can say, okay, become the character. Like, who is this character whose song you're singing, right? Is it from a show? What's the story? What's the position this character is in right now? And then embody that. And that can take you out of that fearful scarcity mindset of the inner critic, and actually put you into a place of more abundance, because you're not being you in that moment, right? So that's like a quick fix. And that's still the thing that you do when you're singing from the inside out with the deeper part of it too. You still do that. Or if there isn't a character, it's the character's you. But that's coming across really, really deeply when you're connected with yourself. I met someone who can just sing without even trying. Ooh, or trying very little. Talk about that for just a second, Emily.
So this kind of applies probably to other genres, because I've only heard of a couple opera singers like maybe Pavarotti, Maria Callas, that these superstars that they took training, but it was very little in comparison to the rest of us who have to work really hard, right, to get our voice where we want it to be. Pop singers like Adele, for example. These singers can just sing without even trying. And my thought that came to my mind was, well, why? Because they do not care what other people are thinking. That's not there's no cookies, I call, in their computer messing up their it's just they don't care. It just comes out and that's it. There's no trying to fix it or make it right or any of that. So, but I mean, yes, you'll see singers that are very naturally gifted and with some refining and some little effort, they can really be great. And what is the difference between them and those of us that are like inching our way up this journey? Not this like, wah, you know what I'm saying? So that's why that thought came to me.
Yes, wonderful. The art of letting go. I will also add, though, Adele may not have much training. She's also had a lot of vocal surgeries, and in my opinion, does not belt in a healthy way, unfortunately. And if she
Amen.
wanted to come
Yeah.
spend some time with me, I would help her with that, but I haven't been able to get in touch with her. If
Yes,
anyone knows how to, I'm just kidding. Um, but no, love her as an artist, love her, for
sure.
sure. And Pavarotti had lots and lots of training. Mira Lafreni was like his soprano counterpart, who also just has an amazing voice. Um, so, what was it? Hold on, I was gonna tie it back into something else. What was it? Hmm. Yeah, I said the main thing about Adele. Now I can't remember what I was gonna say.
It's
I,
not
I
it's
had
not mean, it's accurate, but at the same time, like most people don't just start in that place, where they're just making really great music
Right.
and artistically using their voice and having that capability. So she wasn't worried about trying to do it right, and then she became a
Yeah.
millionaire. But I
Yes.
agree with you. I don't want to ruin my voice to do it.
Right. Well, and none of us should have to. That's part of the law. The law is learning how to do it right, right? But then the love is super duper important and is often overlooked. So I would say this. I'm going to leave you with this thought, and we're going to wrap up. Um, I believe that talent is actually a person's sense of knowing and believing that they know how to do things. So, and this is true. This is another thing I want to talk about this week is, have you discovered your zone of genius as a singer? So everybody has their zone of genius, but often we discount it. And we say, oh, that's easy for me, so it doesn't mean anything. It's not worth anything because it's easy for me, right? But people who have talent, they're like, I can do this and I love it. It's amazing, right? And so they let it out, kind of like Leontyne Price, right? With her 9 encores. She's like, a huge part of talent is really that self-belief and that self-validation. So singing from the inside out. Do you guys have any questions for me? Or does anybody want to say what their takeaways are from day one today? I would love it if you want to say it in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and say something, I would love to hear from you. Okay, more about the definition of talent. Yeah, this just kind of like came to me one day. I was like, what actually is talent? And I really believe that it is somebody who can, even if it's not globally in their whole life or globally in all of the genres that they could sing, there's one thing that they know they do well, and they believe it and they let it happen. They let it out. And that's talent. So the second guessing diminishes any sort of talent that could be within a person. There has to be that self-belief to propel it into motion, into fruition. Yeah, Emily. Oh,
Hey, but have you ever had the student or seen a singer that thinks they know how to do it? They believe in themselves, but they don't know anything. They don't
yep.
know what they're doing at all. And it's an interesting experience to navigate, help them navigate that. Is
Yes.
that is that talent or just a belief?
Well, they're talented in their self-belief, yes, but they need the law.
Okay.
I need the law.
Okay.
So, right. And I think that everybody's talented in different ways. And it is important to have that ability to let go of what other people think and to be able to really tap in. I don't know if anybody saw my story from yesterday or the day before. Rick Rubin, The Creative Act. This guy is a genius. And he talks about you really can't care what other people think. And it's true, when you're creating something, you can't take them into account. They have nothing to do with what you're going to create. It has to be 100% from yourself. Otherwise, it's just like you said, cookies in the computer. Holly, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was. I was gonna say I love that I'm here mostly because I am not a professional singer. That hasn't been my career path. So, but I do sing. And I know Elisa from New York. I play guitar, I sing, but I do it for myself. I've never done it as a career. So as I'm listening to these things unfold, it's so interesting for me because I'm approaching it from such a different perspective of when you were like, what is talent? And I thought to myself, it's not what other people think. It's when you believe in yourself and not only just like I can do this, because there's a little bit of like ego and identity in that. It's when you really can tap into it's probably why I haven't tried to make music a career for me because I recognized it as it was my way of processing my emotions. It was like me sharing myself. And I want to take that and expand it because if I do ever decide to step into that position where I'm trying to be a professional musician or singer, I'm seeing the other side of it from you guys. And so it's just really I just wanted to leave that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. Holly, when we talked 2 weeks ago or whenever, 3 weeks ago, I can't remember when it was, but I remember because I was telling you about my approach and then when you said what you said, I was like, oh yeah, this totally doesn't apply to you. Like I could help you with other things, but you got this part figured out because there's never been stakes. It's when there's stakes involved that people get in there
Yeah.
get crazy about,
Totally,
oh,
totally.
I
Like performing or like learning a different piece. I've only just played what I want to play or my own music. I write my own stuff. And I don't feel weird singing it in front of people because it's mine. And I'm like, oh, they can hate it if they want to. Like, yeah.
That's right. And that's super healthy. I think that's something that's really hard, especially us, we who aren't singer-songwriters and we're singing someone else's music. There's like already a standard for how it's supposed to
Hmm.
be sung, which gets you straight
Yeah.
into your head. You're like, well, I can't be
Yeah.
like, I have to be
This is
like,
why this is so great because it's just I'm seeing all these different layers and I'm like, oh, this is so good to like see all the different perspectives. Anyways, lovely.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Another interesting one, an internal psychological process singing is absolutely, it really is. And I think that it doesn't have to be, but if it's going to be something that is going to move your audience, where you're going to feel a connection to your audience, it does have to be that because you have to go inside and figure out what's going on in there, in order to let the best of yourself out and your whole self. So just a small commitment. Okay, idea came to you when you were talking about law versus love. What if I made love the law? Oh my gosh. Okay, that's a good question. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So I'm gonna finish for today, but I'm going to write this down. What if I made love the law? Because I have to tell you about an experience I had um, when I was redefining everything uh, after my divorce when I was living in New York. Um, I love that. That's a great question. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. If anybody else wants to share any final thoughts, I'm open to that. Otherwise, we're going to say bye for now and meet back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Um, I can't tell you how much it means to me to hear your thoughts because I've been on this journey. That first hypnotherapy session was in 2011, beginning of 2011. So I've been on this journey for something like 14 years. And I've talked with a lot of people about it, but I don't feel like everybody, I don't know. I don't know if everybody is interested in having this conversation, but people who are, I appreciate it so much because, we as humans, as fellow humans, have a lot of the same experiences, but we don't necessarily talk about them. And especially the hard ones, I feel like, but even the joyful ones, it's great for us to be able to talk with each other about those and understand how we are so similar and we can provide so much support to one another when we're connected in that way. So thank you for being connected with me today. And I so look forward to tomorrow. Does anybody have anything before we go? You're so welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for being here. And yeah, until tomorrow, I will wish you namaste. The light within me honors the light within you. Have a wonderful rest of your day.